Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Good, man. I feel good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, too.
Yeah?
Doing
You're all
pretty good. Can't
dressed up,
complain.
dapper. You got your tie on again.
Yeah, man. B-Nails tie. I'm going to be recording our Black Friday promo video today.
Oh, damn.
Biggest weekend of the year for us.
Coming up for that. You know what's cool for me is since I retired from police work, I have not worn a tie once.
Yeah?
Yeah, I started paring down my closet. I got rid of a bunch, but I still kept a handful. But I think I'm going to get rid of more.
Yeah?
I have like one.
Well, you don't like ties.
Don't like them.
You don't like getting suited and booted like I do.
Sport coats, nope. I tried to give you some of that stuff.
Yeah. I think I took like a pair of pants of yours or something.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
A shirt.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, everything's good for you?
Yeah, things have been good. Recently had a nice little trip to H-Town to see my dad in Houston. That was cool. Realized I haven't seen him in almost a year, so that was good. He got a surgery. He was diagnosed with cancer not too long ago. But it was very early stages, stage 1, and we're just waiting on results back. He had a successful surgery, colon cancer. They cut out the cancerous cyst out of his colon, and just waiting for the lab reports now, so hopefully we get some cancer-free reports here soon.
He's doing all right?
Yeah, he was doing really good. I kind of thought, post-surgery he would just be immobilized, but he was doing pretty good, walking around, cooked, we hung out, so it was good.
Yeah, dude, a couple things I don't ever want to hear in the same sentence with my name is surgery and colons.
Yeah, for real.
There's no way that's going to be good for me.
Yeah, and how about you? What's new in Jared's world?
Man, we're just living, you know what I mean? Just trying, like a lot of people, just trying to figure out what's going on. I think the hardest thing for us is just things change so much right now out of your control that it's kind of thrown a little wrinkle in how we kind of organize our lives. So just making the best of what we got.
Yeah.
Which I think ties good to this week's episode, the purpose of living freely.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you, and how do you go about it? I think that's a big lesson my family's had during this time is we weren't as free as we thought we were. And we want more freedom.
What do you mean you weren't as free as you thought you were?
Right. Well, here's something I thought about. You spend a lot of your life working to pay for a house.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you really own? So you pay it off. But what if the city fails to provide water? Or there's no electricity? Like you literally worked your whole life and you own some wood. You know what I mean? Like you can't do anything else with it. You're not totally free. You're not totally, what you own doesn't sustain itself. Right? And Taya's been, my youngest daughter has been furious about this for a while. She's like, Americans are so dumb. Like, why do we waste all this water and space to grow grass? Nothing eats it. You got to mow it. It takes resources. And she's kind of right. You look around the world, most people, if they have a little plot of land, they try to grow some kind of food.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we just run to the grocery store. So, I mean, it's just been an eye-opening experience, with some of the restrictions and the lockdown and everything we've gone through this year to really question how free am I living?
Yeah.
And if I'm dependent, where are my dependencies? And where have I been exposed?
Yeah.
Same for our business. Like we're on opposite ends because your business was, because you're e-commerce, you stayed very active.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas both my businesses, like I had, 6 weeks of nothing, online videos, but that's not the same as somebody coming to a gym. So I think it's good today to dive into why do we want freedom, if we want it? Because I don't believe everybody wants to be free. which is ironic, but I honestly don't think it.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be told what to do. They want to, and in some places that's kind of a guarantee thing, and they don't want the responsibility of creating on their own.
Can be a big responsibility.
It's huge.
I think this year has probably made a lot of people think about their freedoms. I know at the height of COVID, when there was all the shutdowns, it did feel like a prison, that we were imprisoned in our homes, not even in our businesses. It was even with my own office, it was kind of, I felt like, going to work kind of on the DL and having the masks and so much imprisonment, where this year didn't feel like there was an abundance of freedom.
Just not a freedom of choice. And I think that's what really hit home for me is I had done what I thought I was supposed to do my whole life. Right? Like I was a good person. I did the military. I did a career. I saved my money. I had 401ks. And then at, this stage of my life, I'm still being told what to do. Don't go out, stay here. And I'm like, what the hell? You gotta be kidding me, dude. I didn't come this far for you to boss me around.
Right.
And it's just been one of those times where I think, and I hope a lot of people reflect on what's really important. We've talked about that numerous times. And for me, I realize I got to be free. Like I've never been one to, I don't like rules, which is weird, right? Being a policeman, you're like, oh, he probably just loves having rules. I hate fucking rules. I hate them. Especially if I ask you, why do we have this rule? And you say, because. I'll guarantee you I'll never follow it. Unless, like, I hurt myself and I'm like, oh, that's why we have that rule, which has happened before too.
Right.
But yeah, this whole time I think has just made us reevaluate a lot of different things.
So how do you define freedom?
For me, man, being free is having control of the choices in my life. Right? If I want to be somewhere, I go somewhere. If I want to interact with this group of people, I'm going to go interact with that group of people. If I put my money into a business, I should be allowed to run my business. If I want, like that, if I want to go somewhere, I should be able to go. Like freedom, and that's what I always thought America was about. I was like, man, we're the ones.
Yeah, land of the free.
And then all of a sudden it's taken away. And even as we progress forward, there's threats of more lockdowns again, right? Like and I think that's kind of why it's weighed heavily on people. As we went through it, I would say the majority of people did what they asked, including me. And then we never got past it. And now we're like so far into it and they're threatening more stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm not free. Like this is no longer freedom for me. And that's the big thing for me is I just need to be able to choose. And then I need to be able to suffer the repercussions if I choose poorly and reap the rewards if I choose greatly. Right? Like I don't think so my business goes great, I don't think I owe a bunch of people my business. That's not free, right? If you're taking that from me. And on the flip side, if my business fails miserably, I don't get to blame nobody else. Like I want that. And that's what I want for my kids and I want for your kids and everybody out there is just the freedom to be who you're supposed to be. And that's been challenged in 2020. Mm-hmm. We've kind of all been put in the same categories.
Yeah. Do you feel that it's only been in 2020, in this year, to where freedoms have been taken away? Or
no. I don't, but I think this is the first time that it hit everybody. Like honestly, if you study a little bit of history, the Patriot Act after September 11th is one of the greatest government intrusions on our privacies and our freedoms. But we all supported it because it was the Patriot Act. We thought we were doing our part to make sure terrorists didn't blow up our buildings. Think about this next September is 20 years. Mm-hmm. and we still have all the same restrictions on freedom.
And what does that act do exactly?
It allows people to collect data.
Mm.
It allows them to track emails and cell phones and share. You know what I mean? There's a lot, which is good in some sense. Don't get me wrong. But not when it's used against people that aren't terrorists, right? And that's why it's being challenged in court, why people are so against it. So, no, it's not the first time. But I think it's the first time at this degree. Like, it's a worldwide thing we're going through. So you're seeing people all around the world questioning, like, what's happening? Why is this happening to us? And then you're seeing the civil discontent kind of rise up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in a place like Fort Collins, Colorado, upper middle class, college educated, affluent, you know, number one place to live in the country, that we don't get a lot of adversity like this. You know, like we had the flood. We have some things, but not at this degree. Like, there's very few times that something's going to happen in New Orleans or Detroit or, you know, some small town in New Hampshire, and it's also affecting us in Fort Collins. You know, so I think that's the magnitude. And then, quite honestly, the ability of social media to share everybody's stories and their opinions and all the issues that come with that.
So what does freedom look like to you?
Well, for me, man, we're making changes. You know, I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show or not, but we've leased some property and some rural property, right? I've pretty much been a city kid my whole life. And one of the things I realized coming from this is I had done the American dream, right? I had worked, I had provided for my family, bought houses, I had the car, you know what I mean? We had the stuff. But when we weren't free to go move around, that stuff didn't really matter to me. What I was craving was being in nature and hearing the winds and the trees and seeing the animals. And when I was confined to the house that I had worked so hard to buy, to be in the subdivision with everybody else, and I realized I live right on top of all these other humans. I don't know any of their names. But I'm not trying to be rude, I don't necessarily care to, right? Like, I don't go out of my way. I get in my car and I drive to nature. Andrea and I really sat and we're like, where do we feel best and where do we feel at peace? And that was out in the woods and being gone. So we've leased some property and we're going to make some changes in the upcoming year to really flip our life, where we've been living around all these people and we drive hours to get away and go experience nature, to go the other way and live out in nature, and then when we want to see humans, we'll drive in to find them.
Yeah, being isolated in nature is definitely one way to exercise some freedom, right?
Yeah, but I
do
tell
whatever
you,
the hell you want out there.
It's been the weirdest thing. I've never been a big anxiety person, right? I've never, you know, I've been an athlete my whole life and performed. I did cage fights, and I never felt anything like I felt in 2020. The heaviness in my heart, the heartbeat, the crazy thoughts all the time, and the wondering what's next. And really the only thing I found this year that quelled that was either my physical fitness, just running until I was just so tired it couldn't happen anymore, or getting away from everything and going out to nature. So that's it for me, man. Is being free means I'm starting to control the variables of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what kind of scenery am I in? Can I control some of my own foods? You know, what happens if they tell me, you know, I can't go here? Do I have a means to supplement that? Less dependency.
Yeah.
You know, if you're dependent on people, or if you're dependent on things, that challenges your freedom because you're going to need it.
Definitely.
You know, and that's one of the things, if I can share something with our community, man, is that financial piece. If we hadn't been smart with our money and conservative through good times when we had abundance and we could have bought more stuff than we had, and we could have had a bigger house than we did, it'd have been really tough to survive this time. You know, and if you find yourself owing a lot of money to things, technically not free. You know what I mean? I think that's a place that in a capitalistic society built on consumerism, like our whole market is like, I got to keep you coming back buying.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if I can get you to buy to where now you owe me money for long term, you have to do certain things to make sure you always have that amount of money. You know, and I'm blessed. And we didn't have a huge master plan on financial freedom. We just kind of were smart with things and kind of just worked out. But that's a huge thing for us, is being able to get away and not owe people money.
Yeah.
And that's a trap a lot of young people fall in, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get too caught up and try to keep up with everybody else. They buy stuff they really can't afford. And then when things don't go perfect and they drop a little bit, there's that extra stress of, oh, how do I continue to keep this stuff?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's stuff. You know, what about you? What are you doing to live freely?
What am I doing to live freely? Well, I think I've realized that I can't control everything that happens around me. I can't control my environment. There's always external factors all the time, right? And this year I've really done a lot more inward work. And I've realized that I'm always free within. You know, I can close my eyes,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely free to think, to go anywhere you want. That's why we have a brain and imagination, and we can meditate and think and visualize, and that I can escape any external reality from going inward. And that has been my biggest source of freedom, is being able to go within. And it all starts from within, right? Happiness, everything is from within. And I think that's been the biggest lesson for me this year, because like you were saying, dependence on things in the external world, I learned real quick this year, oh shit, if I depend on my business being successful, trials being open to go train, restaurant, anything being open, you know, to go hang out. If I'm depending on these things in the external world for my happiness or for my freedom, then there may be a time like this year to where that can be taken away. That's why this year I'm really grateful for, because it really challenged me. And I remember feeling very lonely, very down, very sad during those lockdown times, and not being able to do the things that I can do on a regular basis. But I'm very grateful to have gotten a lot deeper on this spirituality path. You know, I'm grateful to Courtney and a lot of the books that I've been reading one about the Dalai Lama right now. Just finished one called The Autobiography of a Yogi. And these are ancient practices, you know, that have been around forever. And really going inward is where I can always feel free.
Do you think there's, you know, you're I think you've talked about in other episodes, you're kind of, I'm going to say anti-war, but you definitely you're not a person that would look to go to war on things.
Oh, yeah, I would say I'm anti-war.
So you're anti-war. Yeah, I didn't want to overphrase that.
Yeah, definitely.
But are there freedoms that you would be like, no, I'm fighting you for this?
Well, I think one of my favorite quotes is, and I don't know who said it, but it's something along the lines of, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
Right. I'm an MMA fighter. I like that type of skillful, artful violence, and I understand that there are times where war, quote unquote, fighting may be necessary, but I think that's only when something is being taken away from you, right? Even in Scripture, Bible, Quran, Old Testament, you shouldn't ever kill, right? But there's an exception if someone comes in your house and is trying to kill you, you know, to save your own life. And that's what I believe, but I don't think...
So what freedoms?
What freedoms what?
What freedoms would you fight for?
Any freedom that's trying to be taken away from me.
But we had freedoms taken away this year. So what ultimate freedoms? Like if this happens, like there's no way I'm following this. Like I will fight tooth and nail on this one.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you say?
That's a complex question. There's a lot of variables. For example, I hate wearing the mask.
Yeah.
You know, you can say that that's a little freedom that's taken away, right? The freedom of just walking out of your house with the ability to breathe freely and not have this hindrance on your face.
Yeah.
But that's not something because of the circumstances. And again, it's so hard because these days it's just so hard to believe what information is true.
But what's fact?
And what's fact?
Here's what I'll tell you is fact about the mask. What did it say? 85% of communication is nonverbal.
Something like that.
85.
The majority, yeah.
When I put the mask on, you guess what I lose?
The ability to smile.
85% of your communication is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not saying you can't have masks and the virus and all that shit, but what I'm saying is it is absolutely an infringement on my freedom because now you and I don't communicate the same. If we had our mask on, this podcast would not be the same.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right? I wouldn't know if you're smiling under it. I wouldn't know if you're happy. I wouldn't know if you were like, right? Think about it, sometimes you'll say something, but I know there's a question I'm supposed to answer in it without it being a question.
Yeah.
Because I can see your face. I can see like, okay, this is where you pick up. This is where, that's nonverbal. But when I'm here, we got none of that.
Yeah. And see,
so for me, that's not one I'm necessarily going to fight over.
But here's the thing: I would be willing to fight for, but I don't know how. You know, and that's the thing is there's fights where we're being disarmed and you don't even know who the enemy is, and those are the most difficult fights to win if you can't even identify the enemy. That's step one, right? And that's I think what is so difficult about certain things that are going on in the world right now is you don't know. That's
where the weight comes from, and that's where the stress comes from.
Yeah,
I agree.
Not knowing, and that's how I feel every election during the elections, right? Because $1 billion, literally from each side, is being spent on the marketing to try and tell you who the enemy is, who you should be fighting.
Yeah,
right. Trump is evil, Biden is evil, or whoever, and you don't know. You don't really know. You know?
No, but you know what I do know? I will hate you if you don't like my guy. That's a fact.
Right.
We will no longer podcast because you don't like my guy. Meanwhile, both of us like, we don't really know our guy. we don't actually know.
Nobody really knows our guy.
Why do we vote for that? Because our dads did. Our dads told us to vote for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you know what I mean? It's such bullshit. So for me though, here's where I would absolutely fight you. And I think I'm like kind of in that fight by purchasing some land and creating a whole nother lifestyle away is when you take away my freedom to choose for me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really hit me when I went to the grocery store and I was allowed to buy 2 pounds of meat. Well, I set up my life. I go to the grocery store once a week and I like grocery shopping. We've talked about, I like talking to the clerks and I like looking for the deals. Like I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
When I go in a mask and my favorite lady's behind a shield and a mask and I can't hear a freaking thing she's saying. And then I go to beef and you're telling me I got 2 pounds and I got a 19-year-old college athlete living in my house that eats 2 pounds twice a day. And I'm like, this ain't gonna fucking work for me. Like,
right.
Who do I talk to about this? You know what I mean? That's when I'm like, nah, this is not. I didn't come, what's that say? I didn't come this far to come this far. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do all the shit in my life to walk into your store and you tell me I get 2 pounds of meat and I'm gonna go home and tell my kids this is what we got. Like, no, that's not. So that really spurred a lot. And I know it's probably stupid. And people are like, you should be grateful. You got 2 pounds of meat, kids. Mm-hmm. I know. I get all that. I am grateful. But what I'm not grateful is when you tell me. That's all I get. Like, then I'm gonna figure out a way to how do I make sure I always have enough that if my kids need more to get it. And then nobody's going to tell me, like, I'm not going to go home beat down and tell my kids, hey, we got soup and bread today because the store told me. Like, no, not happening. So how do you fight? For me, I fight by looking at where was I exposed? Where was I dependent? And then I make changes in my life so that does not happen again. Because that's the key, right? If I get you once, that's my fault for getting you, right? I shouldn't have done that to you.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do the same shit to you twice, that's your fault for not paying attention the first time.
Yeah. And I think, and it may be just because I'm reading a lot of peaceful books lately, man, but I think it doesn't even have to be a fight, right? Like we can frame it that way. But I think that there's a lot of value in framing it and needing to adapt. Of, okay, this is a different environment. How am I going to adapt?
Sure. You
right?
call it adapt.
Which you have.
Yeah.
You got a property up north, rural area. You guys are growing your own food.
You can only find me when I send you my GPS. Like that's how I want to live from now on. No more address, only GPS coordinates.
and you're adapting, you know, to where I see it as adapting because who are you fighting, right? You're not fighting the grocery store clerk, right? You're not fighting Trump. And it's not a fight unless you know who your opponent is. And I think right now in the world, it's so difficult to really know. I mean, even we put all the blame on the president of the United States, right? But how many policy makers, and you have the Senate and the House and all these things in government. I'm an American and I still don't truly understand how all of our facets of government work and how, but we all put it on one person. We all put it on who the president is, and we do that every election, and it doesn't seem like things really change, you know, to where instead of looking at it of who are we fighting, why not put all of the responsibility back on ourselves and ask, how are we going to adapt to enable ourselves to be more free?
Yeah. What do you think in that vein then? Is freedom a right or a privilege?
That's a tough question. It can
really? Do you think any human was born to be captive? You know what I mean? Do you think they say about government is artificial? The world does not know government.
Mm-hmm.
Government was created by man. I don't believe there was ever a human being that was born to be part of a government system. We're all supposed to be free, I think.
Yeah. Of course, I think that too, but that's not the case.
Why not? If you come together as people, so I think it's a right. I think we're all born with the right to be free. Mm-hmm. I think it becomes a privilege when we let other people determine if we're going to be free or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Saying about the gun, that's one of the things you're talking about here. You don't even understand how our government works. None of us do, really. But yet, right now, government thinks we work for them. They're telling us what to do. And the reality is, if we all go, guys, this is no longer working for us. You're going to change this. They would quickly realize they work for us. We would be free. You know, and it's kind of like, now when we're preparing for this, the thing that came to my mind there is that elephant, right? When it's a little baby and they tie it to that chain into that little baby brick,
mm-hmm.
and it can't move.
Yeah, and they think.
And then it gets to be this giant elephant, and it just stands there because it just remembers it couldn't move when it was little.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's freedom. Like, you're free until you let people tell you you're not, or that it's a privilege, and when they give you a little bit. Well, if we all came together, and that's what scares people, is if we all actually came together and demanded accountability and really a government for the people, it'd be different.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't fathom that. I don't care who you believe in, God, Muhammad, Buddha, spirits, pagan stuff. I don't believe any being was put on earth to serve another being. We were all put on this earth to be unique and to find our way. Unfortunately, we've created governments that limit that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think in a sense, freedom can be a privilege that you can grant yourself. Because a lot of people...
Sure. You've seen that.
Yeah. Well, imprison themselves.
Prison. Who's the young lady? I want to say Anne Frank. Talked about when she would go in her mind, like she would just daydream about playing, and so she was free during the time that she was hiding. You know, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. And for me, I think maybe, I don't know where that noise came. Maybe a lot of what I'm thinking is because I'm reading a very good book called Black Elk Speaks. Joe Rogan recommended it, and it's been fascinating. And so I'm really immersing and studying the Native American culture just because I think there's a lot to learn there. And quite honestly, on this topic, living freely, they were one of the most free cultures we've ever known, and then they weren't. You know, and part of it is, like you said, they didn't know who they were fighting.
Yeah.
They were fighting the cavalry troops, but in reality, the government was doing things that they didn't even know about.
Yeah.
But where are you at with living freely, man?
Well, I think that first and foremost, you need to free yourself from within.
Yeah,
because I think that's the biggest imprisonment that we impose on ourselves, and I've been guilty of it so many times. And still can sometimes put myself in an internal prison. It's all in your head most of the time. We have the power within to change our whole emotion, to change our whole state of being. Closing our eyes, going inward, whatever you got to do, meditate, gratitude, work out. We know. I mean, right now I'm trying to get the splits. So I've been doing this splits video, and I'm watching this really popular yoga lady. Her name's Boho Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, we do her practices a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
YouTube.
Yeah, she has a 14-day splits challenge, and sometimes, you know, when you're trying to hold as far as I can go on the splits for a minute, I'm like, you know, trying to focus on the breath, and she talks about how emotions can be stored in our body, like to where when you're stretching like that and you release the hips, store a lot of emotions, and you can have not only a physical reaction but an emotional reaction of feeling these emotions come up.
Yeah.
So when we can free ourselves inward, then I think that's when things in the external world will seem to be more freeing, and we'll be less dependent on them, because nobody can control. You know, we could be shut down tomorrow. We may have to close our businesses down. We may lose our electricity. This stuff.
Maybe.
To where I think the biggest takeaway from this episode, the purpose of living freely, is to free yourself from within, and the rest will follow.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think is the big takeaway?
I agree that's part of it, and I would say also look externally and see where you're dependent.
Yeah.
And if you're dependent on certain things being a certain way, that's a weakness.
Yeah, because dependence
is not freedom.
Not freedom.
No, I agree. All right, community, get out there and live free. We'd love to hear from you guys. How do you define freedom? And do you think it's a right or a privilege? And are you fighting for? And what would you fight for?
Yeah.
Or adapt for?
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of free, guys, this content is free. All that we ask for your payment is if you got any value out of this, share, like, subscribe to the On Purpose podcast, and get the word out there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.